Hello, I'm here to do another I Ching reading with my deck on the Book of Changes. I am going to assume that some of you out there have found this video through the fates because your guardian or your ancestor, someone who is guiding you in your life, some spirit force is magnetizing this to you, and that you're in a situation right now where you have questions about how you should position yourself, about what's really going on. What's the circumstance? What are the factors at play in that situation that you should be gauging in your response? And so this reading is for you, and it will have some useful thoughts. There may be a line or two that really, really speaks to you that feels like it was just for you. There may be some that don't feel like they're for you. Maybe they're for someone else who's also watching at the same time as you. And so I want you to take everything with the amount of weight it hits you with. If it hits you lightly, take it lightly. If it hits you heavy, really ponder and meditate on how that applies to you and what you can do with it to be to honor that spirit has brought it to you. So I ask the ancestors, spirits, guides, guardians of the elements to bring us the message for those who have been brought to this video today. I consider this to be a timeless video. It may be brought to you in a few hours after I make it, or it may be brought to you next week or months or years down the road. But in any case, it's because somebody was looking out for you, and it's because it's what you needed to hear in that moment. Okay, so generally how I do this is after I'm done shuffling, I just lay them out and I don't look. I just lay them out like this. And then I feel where I'm magnetized to. Which card here? All right, this is upside down. We have Richness Waning, hexagram 55. Hold high expectations of yourself. Your light is an inspiration. Perhaps you have been hiding from a storm, but now is the time to shine as the sun at noon. The storm has moved on just enough to bring you the awareness and clarity you need to judge the situation. However, as always, this light will wane as the sun begins to set. This is our first hexagram. Now, for a moment, while I'm shuffling again and drawing the next one, think a little bit about the element of the sun and what that might be bringing to your situation, and the element of the fire. In the I Ching, I think you can more or less equate these concepts to Western concepts of the sun and Western concepts of fire. The names for these are a little different in Chinese. So in Chinese, fire, this one on the top, is also sometimes called thunder. And the sun one is sometimes called fire. But in my experience and why I've named them as they are is that this fire is much like Western sun in that it's the clarity, the clinging force, the shedding of light that is truth or wisdom. So it has a little bit of an airy and a fiery component when they're sort of alchemized in the highest way. Whereas thunder has a lot of similar attributions to Western concepts of the fire element. That's transformative, it's active, it has a lot of movement to it. It's hot, it causes change, transformation, and has this sort of spreading. I think this is maybe a lightning quality, actually, if you associate thunder with the idea of the storm. The spreading quality, which also happens with fire or wildfire, energizing or catching kind of quality to it. So think about those elements for a minute in your situation, and I will draw the next card. Well, this one fell out. I'm going to go with it. Here we have retreat, which is hexagram 33. The path to success is withdrawal from a perilous situation. Retreat is vital if you are to remain whole. In this way, you are protected from your own weakness and able to remain devoted to your virtuous intentions. Do not let ego mislead you. Okay, I've seen both of these somewhat recently. I don't think together necessarily. But here we have the earth element beneath the heaven element. And if we look at them side by side, we can determine what our changing lines are. This first line is changing, and these last two lines are changing. So 1, 5, and 6, which puts us very middle ground between these two, but we're still technically here, very quickly moving over to here. And so we'll read the lines on this hexagram 1, 5, and 6 to get a sense of this. Before we do that, though, I do like to think of, go this way with it. I like to think of how these elements are changing into each other and maybe what that process feels like in your situation. So we have the sun transitioning into earth. And the idea I try to think of is, how is it balancing? What balance? Why would we need the sun to be transforming into earth? What balance does that give to the sun? In what ways do they support or react or transform one another? And the sun casts shadows on the earth and light onto the earth, but those are together, light and shadow. So when the sun shines onto the earth, we get both sides of that as a result of the earth being this solid thing. If it's the mountain, right, then it is a very large shadow sometimes. Mountain is sometimes what this one is called in Chinese. So think a little bit about the earth and sun and how they interact with each other. And then, so sometimes the mountain hides the sun because it's so big, depending on where the sun is positioned. We have fire and heaven, which are both creative forces, transformative forces. Okay, I'm going to read these lines. So looking at 55, first line 1. Let's first look at some of the names of these. I always say, hey, let's go look at the lines. And then I get here and I'm like, oh yeah, well, I want to read a little bit more than just the lines. So sometimes 55 is called abundance or expansion of awareness. Fullness, a symbol of prosperity, greatness, richness, fruitfulness. It's associated with a zenith moment. Lucidness, or behaviors that are grounded in lucidness. It can be associated with sort of generous, profuse overflowing, or a culminating point at which things begin to overflow. Those are things that are associated with this particular title, the themes of this hexagram, perhaps you could say. The advice to the superior individual reads that The superior man judges lawsuits and imposes punishments. A junsu uses several severing litigating to involve punishing. That's a strange way of wording that, I feel. The superior man decides lawsuits and inflicts the necessary penalties. There's a lot about justice in this one. And discernment, like making correct judgments, where, there is an implication or an assumption here that a wrong has been done, or in the case of when a wrong has been done, that there is a need to judge and give consequence to that wrong. And that is inherent somehow in this idea of richness and abundance and overflowing, which is, one of the things that always seems to work out for me when I'm looking at these. It's like, oh, it comes together, somehow it all fits. But sometimes there's things that feel like you just need to question, why is that? What goes with that thing? And that usually reveals some mystery, right? Here is a Confucian commentary. Let him be as the sun at noon. Let his clarity shine on all under the sky. That is that relationship between the sun and the earth and the light and the shadow, right? There's given some definition when the sun shines on that mountain and we see which side is which, the light and the darkness. And that the intercourse of heaven alternates between abundance and scarcity. And that is the cyclical nature of the sun, which is one of its qualities. It has a cycle of darkness and lightness to it as well, which is the cycle of abundance and scarcity in the case of this one, which is called richness waning. Richness is one side of that sun when it is at noon, and waning is the side when it's setting. Both are present here in this one hexagram. Let's see here. A sudden and numinous illumination, a sort of enlightenment or expansion of awareness, that sun rising into its zenith point, and you're having that sort of aha moment where it's really reaching into that idea of it being associated with the truth or a wisdom, good judgment in the advice of the superior individual. Line 1 reads, and that was just more commentaries. He meets with his matched partner. Although they are the same kind, there will be no error. The meeting is favorable. That's one person's translation. Meeting one's equal Lord, although a decade without fault, going possesses honor. Meeting a prince of equal rank. So this idea that you're well met. Line 1 is a past line in most of the ways I translate this, but really they're developmental lines. So you have 3, the more changing lines you have, perhaps you could just say the more in flux you are within this transformation that's happening. The transformation between richness waning and retreat. And so something is really in movement with 3. 3 changing lines is a little more than average. I would say 2 is the most common. And then, once you have more than 3, you're really into something a little bit strange, unusual at least. And this first line is a first part of that flux or that developmental change that's happening. And the first part was to have been well met. You met an equal. You met with either you internally reflected and found something within yourself that was of a quality that you were seeking. But it could also be that you have actually in recent times come in contact with and been partnering with or walking with or courting friendship with someone who really feels matched to you, who feels like an absolute equal partner. Um, and that is favorable. That is auspicious. That is to great fortune for you, right? It is good luck. It is all the things that finding an equal partner should be. And so it's important to not take that for granted, but to instead really soak that in, really um, consider how fortunate you are, how lucky you are to have found this, and to let it be what it's going to be. It's best let it reach its richness, right? Its zenith moment. Don't let it wane before it's time to wane. Um, that that is the advice for that first part of this development. And lines 5 and 6 will give us more about where we have moved in this. But this meeting is something that is pivotal in your life right now. You're in a moment of things things could go many different ways. This has changed you. This relationship or meeting or partnership, this confrontation with someone who was, by these metaphors, a prince or a lord or um, someone who is not just matched to you, but has power within you, has empowered you, has given you some sort of um, something, some sort of gift that is changing the course of your life, that is giving you a different direction than your life would have had if you had not met with this, encountered this person or this thing or this aspect of yourself. That is always a possibility with these metaphors, that it's always possible that it could be very literal or it could be very internal spiritual work that you're dealing with. And so for some of you watching this, it could be one. And for some of you watching this, it could be another. We're going to read line 5 now. Line 5. Sorry, I'm getting stuck reading other things that are not part of this reading, but they're interesting. The 5th line, magnetic, shows its subject bringing around her the men of brilliant ability. There will be occasion for congratulation and praise. There will be good fortune. I always take references to gender with a grain of salt. Most of them are men in this text because of patriarchy and other historical reasons. Some other translations read, there comes a pattern, a celebratory and uplifting, a celebration, yeah, auspicious. Glory will come, causing prosperity and recognition. If he could welcome his notable partner, there would be something to celebrate and praise. That's somebody who has really elaborated that. The variegated beauty of the sky after a storm now appears. Blessing and fame are one. Good fortune. That's a different take than some of these others. But I think the idea, this is surrounded by men of brilliant ability, or this idea of uplifting or brilliance and beautification. It seems that you have, possibly through this partnership you met in line 1, possibly through multiple relationships or encounters, you have surrounded yourself with this lightness, this enlightenedness, that lucid action and lucidity around what actions you need to take is coming to you as a result of what you are surrounding yourself with. You are gathering your wits about you, so to speak. I'm going to look at this other one. He receives the mandate held in a containing beauty. There will be reward and praise. The way opens. You have the ability to usher in abundance. Yeah, so that's idea that you have brought in. The richness, right? You have enriched your life with what you are surrounding yourself with. So this is a developmental progression. Maybe this first encounter in line 1 with the match has given you the insight or strength or encouragement or something that you needed to continue to seek out surroundings that are giving you the abundance that you need in your life. They are companions that are bringing you beauty, enlightenment, grounding, what you need to have sort of like a creative strength in the course of where you're deciding to go. And you're able to really solidly feel those decisions as a result of having surrounded yourself with the correct influences, the correct sources. That's lovely. Okay, one more line is line 6. His house is in a state of abundance. He screens off his family. He peers through the gate and no longer perceives anyone. For 3 years, he sees nothing. Misfortune. Abounding, one's roof, screening one's dwelling, peeping through one's door, living alone, one without people. 3 years' time not encountering. Pitfall. This does not seem so auspicious. Making the house rich, shading the home. A peek in the door finds quiet. So I'm kind of feeling this sense of having pulled in all of this abundance and maybe hoarding it a little bit to the point that it's no longer abundance anymore. But let me see what else we have on commentaries to kind of support my intuition there. So there's like a closing off of reality suggested here in line 6. And generally with 3 changing lines, the developmentals, right, is your present line is the middle line, the line 5 we just read, your future line, but not your future line, in the sense that line 6 is almost always like a cautionary line, maybe the word I'm looking for. It's always kind of a cautionary tale. It's the going too far line. In this, if every line is a step in the progress, beginnings, then line 4 or 3 is crossing a threshold, making the hero's journey. It's like the middle arc, conquering the main obstacle in order to reach the new realm, which is the second trigram. Of which 5 is the attainment line. 5 is almost always the king line or the line of having attained the thing. And then line 6 is the oops, we went too far line. Sometimes it's a sage line, sometimes it's a fool line, sometimes it's a very tipsy line where you could go either way. And this time, it seems like this the progression of richness waning is about the taking in of the richness, and at which point we we have a warning about maybe hoarding that richness and becoming isolated, sort of cutting off from the source because we figure we had it and we kind of make some assumptions that it's there forever. And so I would say to you, as a result of that idea, giving you a sense of that structure, that's not your future necessarily. That's your warning to not close your door now that you've got all this richness in there, that you will actually close off the source that renews that, and it will become stale or trapped or dead, right? If you do that. And so there's this very strong suggestion that you do not. Let's look a little bit at 33, which is the retreat, which is sort of your future hexagram. And this is not your central advice. It's just something you should get a little sense of, like, that's the direction that these lines take us into. And it's just part of the message you need to hear, is how I would say. that should be interpreted. Some other names for retreat are that withdrawal or the yielding, the retiring. It can be strategic. And advantage comes from firm correctness and attention to detail, success in what is small, perseverance furthers. A developmental withdrawal. Withdrawal successful, small benefit is correct. And this is sort of changing my thoughts a little bit about that line 6, which was about closing the door, right? Because this withdrawal is about a very intentional keeping people at a distance. And that's not necessarily an inauspicious or unbeneficial choice in this particular case. So I want to look a little bit more at the lines here. I always, in this case, when I'm seeing, and this is inherent in the I Ching, that there be a polarity within one idea. And you want to find a way to reconcile that to some extent. And I always say, evaluate yourself, evaluate what you're feeling and what your motives are. And don't let yourself make your decisions based on the past. That there's a trap to spending too much time there. Instead, really reflect on how your actions will affect your future, or how they're affecting you right now, even more so. Are they nourishing you right now? Is this an action that feels nourishing? If retreat feels like the thing that is your next step for a good reason, not because you have this past that makes you afraid of every single thing or want to protect or put up boundaries, but because this truly is the nourishing thing right now in your present, and for your future, then maybe it is the right move. I'm going to look just a little bit at some other thoughts that may bring me just insights here. So this idea of abundance here with the the ideas in this complex hexagram that I really still feel like I'm one of the few that I'm really still working through, and I'm gradually spiraling into the depths of it. It seems like every time I'm like, oh gosh, I had not thought of that. So the last time I pulled this one, we were at a line that talked about seeing stars at midday and how the shadow allows you to, being in dark shadow allows you to see the stars. And that's not one of the lines that we're looking at for this one, but the idea of light and shadow there is very interesting. And I'm reading here that this one is very closely associated with the height of summer and when the year changes, the summer solstice in particular. There was a practice of the king to go into a mourning hut, um, to sort of contemplate on that. Like once we hit the zenith of summer, or at the height of summer, then, we're going back into this part of the cycle where the days get darker a little bit by day by day by day. We're getting a little more, bit more darkness. The dark forces start encroaching back in on us, right? But that those are a necessary part, like the seed sits in darkness, for example, before it breaks through the earth. It's a necessary part of that growth cycle to have that darkness. And so maybe that relates carefully with the idea of the retreat, right? The going into the hut, maybe part of your seed emerging process. And it's there is a tradition of that happening in summer, to some extent. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I hope this has brought some of you some thoughts that really bring light to your position in your situation and help you really further meditate on um, where your internal and state and your actions in the world can meet this appropriately for you. Yeah, that's what I have.